Okay, so as we said before, the session is going to be recorded, and the full recording will be uploaded to the OLS YouTube channel in the next few days, and it will also be available on the OLS website. Please feel free to use the chat. You can put your questions there, but we prefer if you put them on the shared document. In case we're not able to answer everything fully today, we have like the backup and add, for example, a Q&A section to the website, so every question is answered. Captions are available via Zoom, so you will be able to check the captions option if you want. The transcription will also be made available. And please, I see that everyone has their full name. It will be great if you can add a W or an S in case you prefer to engage in a written way or spoken, so we know like how you're able to engage in this activity. So let's start with the icebreaker. So back to you, Irene.
Yeah, so as Dua was saying, I think we know some of you, most of you, but we're curious to hear from you. What brings you here, and have you been involved in OLS activities before? We have a space in the shared document just below the roll call, so please feel free to share your answer there. If you prefer, you can also use the chat and then we will copy paste your response. Or you can open your mic. We're a small group, and I think you prefer to speak, then feel free to also open your mic and share what brings you here, and what activities you have participated with OLS before. And I'm starting to see some answers. People who have been expert speakers and facilitators at some of our cohorts, a Nebula cohort, participation as a participant in an open seats cohort, and yeah, as a mentee and as a mentor. So yeah, people have, it's really nice always to hear people coming back uh, for other follow-up activities that we do. And we love having people back in new roles, back in, um, you know, more leadership positions than when they initially participated with OLS. That's always really, really nice to see. And brand new to OLS, so Adrian, welcome to the first OLS activity. Yeah, and what brings people here? Some people are sharing that they are figuring out how to continue with their project, especially with organization and management of the team. Balancing time and capacity is always a challenge. What else? Just excited to learn about the cohort and to learn more. Um, yeah, new project ideas. Yeah, so I think this is exactly the space to um, bring these questions that you might have around what it is that we're building next in OLS and how this builds on previous cohorts like Nebula and Open Seats. We also love hearing that people want to contribute and bring their expertise. There will be a space to do that as well in this new cohort. Um, yeah, and as Joe is saying in the notes, we can't wait to hear your new ideas, what you've been working on, where your projects are at the moment. And yeah, that's exactly the idea for our new cohort. So thank you for sharing. Um, and with that, I'm going to pass it back to Reba because I think it's a good connection to introduce what Sys2Systems is.
Yeah, thank you. I love seeing how people come back in different roles, how new people are wanting to get engaged with OLS activities. So let's go and dive into what's this new the system initiative. So as a little bit of context, the Sister System project builds on other activities previously held by OLS, for example, the Open Seeds mentoring and training program that was mentioned in the document. And as context, this is like 16 weeks mentorship and cohort-based training for people who are interested in applying open principles in their work and becoming open science ambassadors in their communities. And as part of this program, participants join with a project that they either are already working on or want to develop during this program individually or in teams. And that's why the program is called Open Seeds, because the idea of this program is helping people start growing this idea they have related to open science. But one question that we've been asking ourselves is what's could happen next? Like after people go through Open Seeds, they have this like beautiful idea with great plans, but how can we support what's coming next? How can we support people to grow these projects? And also, how can we support people growing these projects, understanding that projects don't live in isolation, but they're part of an ecosystem of other projects and contexts and different circumstances? So the question that we've been working on is how to support open projects transition to the next stage. And in the past year, thanks to the support of a grant from CCI, we've been reflecting and researching and practicing how to answer this question. And our answer goes around this idea of what's the organizational infrastructure for project and community sustainability. And this means thinking about the practical knowledge, skills, and networks that are needed to lead a project over time, to navigate the research funding landscape, and to build connections that enable the long-term impact that everyone wants to have in their project. And one key part of this reflection has been the one of how to navigate the research funding landscape. And because of that, initially, we were thinking about this idea of grant writing, how we help people and support people in writing grants to fund their projects. And although this looked like a very interesting idea, we soon realized that this is like a view that it's not sustainable for many reasons. Because one question that we start asking was what involves being ready to submit a funding proposal? Because searching for funding is not about the wording, like how to write each section of a funding proposal, but how you know you're ready to write that funding proposal and how you make your project ready for that. And we realized that there are a lot of things that need to happen before the funding proposal it's written. For example, some funding proposals require you to have partnerships, and that partnerships can happen, I don't know, in the month timeline that you have to write the proposal. These are things that need to happen before. And maybe you need some strategic outreach so your project is known to the funders and they are aware of what you're working towards. And there are a lot of things that are very important things that were not in the surface when you think about applying for funding, but are things that your project might need, or things that we realize that in the history of many projects appear in the pathway they went through. For example, people meeting with key persons that were their mentors and help them grow their project, or maybe you participate in an event, make a special connection and engage with people that will allow you to move your project forward, or just being part of a network or a community, or even the timing when some of these opportunities appear are very important in order to navigate that funding landscape. And that's why in the past year, we realized that we need to move the shift from this idea of grant writing like the act of wordings, put words in a proposal, to this idea of grant readiness, like how you can support a project and how can we make our projects ready for the moment when these opportunities for funding, for example, appear. And we've also been asking other questions that are key to understanding how applying for funding works. It's like, how do we actually learn how to write a funding proposal? Because sometimes when you are in the in the need to write a proposal, it's not the same as other like written things that we in our like educational professional context we have to write. And the process is very different from other genres that we might be used to write. And an analogy that we sometimes like to use is the one of research papers, that for many people who have gone through higher education or postgraduate studies, a research paper is a genre that you became very familiar with. It's a genre for sharing knowledge within a research community. And you learn how to write that by becoming a member of that community. So you usually join the community as a reader of published papers. So you are familiar on how they look. And then as a student, maybe you have some scaffolding to learn how to write them, activities during undergrad students, for undergrad students, or maybe when you're on your postgraduate studies, you learn how to write a research paper, you're experiencing their scaffolding, you have guidance on how to get there. And there are a lot of factors that support that process. For example, research paper have a standard structure, you know who your audience is. There are published papers around that you can read to learn from them, not only from the content, but from the way they've been written. And even in a blind review process, you can imagine who the potential reviewer is. That's why we have jokes about reviewer number 2, because we can imagine how that person looks like. But for funding proposals, things are completely different. Not everyone has previous exposure to this genre. Maybe when you're writing your first grant proposal or funding proposal, this is something you do as a full adult professional, no exposure earlier to anything that seems that looks similar. The format changes from funder to funder. So from every application, you have to learn something new, how to apply to that specific format. There are not a lot of successful examples that are available that you can learn from. So usually you work kind of without a lot of context and a lot of information. And we not always know who our audience is. Like when you write a research paper, you can imagine that your peers are the ones that are going to read this. You imagine who the reviewers are, but with a funding proposal, you know who the funder is, but you don't always know who is actually going to read your proposal. Not in terms of the names, but like what they know about your project or what they know about the topic. So that makes this process very challenging. And the other thing is that this genre, like the funding proposal, is not isolated. It's part of a system of other genres. For example, the call for proposal is another type of text that you need to learn how to read. The review criteria, if it's available, the funder's website, you have to learn how to read it strategically. Maybe there are previous successful projects that you need to know about to learn how to adapt your proposal. That maybe there's an informational webinar that you need to attend to learn more about how to apply, because sometimes there's information there that's not explicit on the call for proposals. And this is part of a bigger system with other influences that come from the outsides that make changes here. For example, political decisions about what's going to be funded and what not, and how you navigate this very complicated system. So that's why in this idea of shifting from grant writing to grant readiness, we realized that there's another key component here. There's partnerships, outreach, mentorship, connections, timing, networks, but also training. Training can play a key part in how you make your project sustainable in the long run. And that's what OLS is aiming to do with this new cohort training about the idea of how to make our project sustainable and how can we be ready when these funding opportunities appear. So in the past year, we've also realized that there are, for example, system thinking gives us a lot of tools to name the complexity of this landscape that we're in. And one of the key concepts that has been we start using is the one of leverage points. And we can think of these different items here as leverage points in the path to community sustainability. And leverage point, as Jonella Meadows proposed, are places within a system where a focus shift can produce significant impact. And we know that we as people involved in open projects can change the system. We don't control like what funders decide to fund. We don't control some political issues around the world. But maybe there are places where a small shift, like doing like a very concrete action, can have an impact that can help our projects be sustainable in the long run. And what we've been like piloting in the past months have been activities that can help us surface these leverage points that can be impactful in, for example, securing funding across diverse organizational and individual pathways in some cases. So what's coming next? So this is the timeline for the system projects. We're currently in June. This is our informational webinar. The system cohort will run from late September to November. In August, we will have the application, some community consultation workshops, and an application webinars for people who want to apply. And as we said before, this cohort will focus on the organizational infrastructure for project and community sustainability. This obviously, as we mentioned before, involves navigating the research funding landscape, but there are other things that projects need to be sustainable in the long run. It's not just about funding, it's about governance, it's about like networks, it's about like conditions that can help project have this long-term impact. And one of the activities that we are organizing are these community consultation workshops. Why? Because at the moment, with the research that we've been doing in the past year, obviously there are some key topics that we know that are going to be part of the cohort. Like we said before, this idea of navigating the research funding landscape, how to build networks and collaboration, how to do targeted and strategic outreach and for making your project visible, how to have good governance and have your project be sustainable and healthy, how to measure impact and how to talk about the impact of the project. And obviously, a topic that we obviously need to cover is how to use AI critically throughout these different topics. But we obviously want this cohort and the context of the cohort and the activities that are going to be that projects are going to engage with be meaningful. So we've been we're planning to organize a couple of workshops to have more input from the community in terms of the topics and the focus, the way that we're going to approach these topics within the cohort. And that's why we, in August, are organizing two community consultation workshops. One about the leverage points for project and community sustainability, and the other one about pathways towards a sustainable open research ecosystem. And each of these topics have different questions that guide them. The first one is about the tools and strategies that are most impactful in securing funding across diverse organizational and individual contexts. And for that, we'll be working on some of these activities that we mentioned before that help surface the leverage points that have been impactful for some projects, and how we can translate that to activities that can help other projects to like learn from this example. So we want to build case studies so other projects have some place to learn from. And in the case of the pathway towards sustainable open research ecosystem, we want to work on the visions of the projects. What visions do we have for a more sustainable open research ecosystem? And how do we build pathways for those visions to become possible over the next 5 years? So this is about where we want projects to go, what are the conditions needed, and what we can do considering those things to achieve those specific visions. And how you can get involved, we centralize all the involvement into one form. Is the expression of interest form. Some people have already started to fill it. There we ask you about the project you're working on and how you want to engage with the system project. do you want to be part of the community consultations workshop? You want to be a cohort participant? You want to engage as a mentor or as an expert? Some of you are familiar with how OLS training usually works. As we mentioned for System System, this is cohort learning. So you have a peer learning part. You engage with experts, but we also offer mentorship. Mentorship is a key part of OLS training. And some people here have been mentors of Open Seats projects. So there are different ways to engage. So we want to centralize everything in one expression form. And as sometimes happen in OLS, people can have different roles. People sometimes in a same cohort, they're cohort participant and experts, for example, because we really believe that peer learning it's like a key part of this offering. So the expression of interest form is like the place to be to express how you want to get involved. And there's another option that's just keep me informed in case you're not sure yet, but want to receive like any update about how things are going to be working in the next few months. Irene, Johanna, I don't know if you want to add anything.
But you did so well.
Thanks. I tried
Riva, I
to.
think
Mhm.
we missed introducing the team who is leading this. So do you want to introduce yourself? I think it's very
Uh,
relevant, the expertise that you're bringing for how
oh,
we're
I
deciding the
didn't thought
cohort.
about. Yeah. So, my name is Riva. I'm based in Valparaiso, Chile, and I have a very mixed background, but I have like a PhD in linguistics, but I also have a background in education. I used to work as a high school teacher. So that kind of framed the way I see the world. Um, but I also do a lot of like open source and software engineering things, so it's very mixed. And in my I have um roles in different like I'm what I like to call a serial volunteer. I'm very good at jumping into projects if they involve like openness and community. I'm in. So I'm part of the leadership team of Our Ladies Plus. I'm also in the board and an editor of Programming Historian that it's about open access. I'm also in the steering committee of Fort, just to name a few. Irene, what about you?
Yeah, so my name is Irene Ramos. I'm a research fellow with OLS, co-leading the Seeds to System training cohort research and design program. And my background is also very interdisciplinary, but more coming from environmental sustainability. And so it feels like part of what I have contributed is this framework of systems thinking. And so that's why it's been a real pleasure to work with Riva and working in a very interdisciplinary way, shaping a cohort with her expertise in linguistics and writing, how people learn to write and to read, and then complementing that with a systems perspective and leverage points, and thinking about sustainability more broadly. So yeah, that's hopefully that is reflected in how we are designing the workshop and the cohort. So with that, I think we are ready for Q&A, and we would love to hear what questions you have about the cohort. I think we can keep some space for recorded Q&A, and then we can also turn off the recording for other questions that you want to bring in. We will have time for that as well. So please feel free to leave questions in the chat or in the document, or just open your mic. So yeah, I'm gonna pause and wait to hear your questions.
I'm just gonna take the option 3 and speak out. I was wondering if the link for the expression of interest form is publicly available or it's something work in progress. Just wanted to check.
It should already be open. The registration link is in this blog post that we shared. And let me find the link, the direct link. So here it is. That is the registration link. I think it should be open, but yeah.
It was open at some point because we had some answers, but let's check. Let's
Great.
check if it's still there. Yeah, I think it is.
Yep, I can access it. Lovely. Thank you.
So this is the registration form for the workshops, the community consultation workshops. The application for the cohort itself will come later in August. But here is already the space for you to express interest if you want to join as a participant or as an expert or as a mentor. So there's a space to say that in this expression of interest. And we actually expect to reuse many of these questions and basically the structure of this expression of interest for the actual application for the cohort. So yeah, and we are inviting particularly people who may want to stay involved, either as trainers, expert mentors, but also as participants. As Rua was mentioning, these workshops are really the space to hear feedback on some of the activities and the scope of the curriculum for the cohort. So yeah, we're hoping to bring together people with different levels of experience, with different experience in different regions, in different types of projects and organizations. So yeah.
I think there's a question on the document. Let me see. I have a lot of. If we have an idea of how many meetings, training sessions will the cohort have? And this will be, we're thinking about 2 sessions per week for 8 weeks, Irene, if I'm correct. 10 weeks. Yes.
Yeah, 2 sessions per week. This is more like an intensive cohort than open seats. If for those of you who are familiar with Nebula, it looks more like a Nebula cohort. So it's like 6 to 8 weeks of cohort sessions before mentoring section toward the end of the cohort rather than at the beginning.
So the idea of the mentoring part, so you engage first in the cohort part, and that will help. There will be activities and the sessions, so we can pair you with a mentor that can help one specific part of your project where you think you will need more use of a mentor. So we're not for people who are not familiar with open seats. In open seats, you start the cohort with a mentor that goes. That's part of the support that you have throughout the 16 weeks. This, in the case of Sys2System, it will be like the cohort section first, and then working with the mentor after the activities of the cohort. There will be a little bit of overlap, but we're thinking this as 2 different stages. So you can have a mentor that has the expertise that your project needs at that moment.
Yeah, we have a couple of other questions in the document. Someone asks, will participants have to pay to participate? No, the cohort will be free to participate. Again, we have funding from with the grant that we have at the moment, we will be able to offer this cohort for free. This is going to be the pilot cohort, and it's also the opportunity to shape the structure of the curriculum. So it will be an iterative cohort, and it will be as much as a learning process for us as an organizing team as it is going to be for the participants. However, there is a limited number of places that we can support, and so there will be a selection process. We will be mainly looking into the maturity of the project, just so that people are able to make the most out of this cohort. So yeah, that's participation requirements. And there's another question. What if I can make it to all of the sessions? So, as with most of OLS activities, the sessions, or at least the presentation part of the sessions will be recorded. We imagine that this is a cohort that will be very interactive, perhaps even a little bit more than Open Seats or Nebula. So there is going to be a lot of benefit in joining the sessions live. We will be encouraging teams to apply from a project together so that if someone has to miss a session, then there's at least another teammate from that project who is able to join and still participate, and then together they can like coordinate and share some of the lessons. We anticipate also that part of what the selection process will involve is asking people for their availability and whether they can participate in as many sessions as possible in this cohort. Yeah, so these are really good questions. We haven't yet updated the website with these details, but that is coming up soon about the details for the actual cohort.
Yeah, but these questions are super
Yeah.
useful to know how we can like make that information clear.
Yeah, what else? Oh, there's another question coming up about the time of the calls. So the time is still, we haven't decided it yet, but it will be around a time that works for many time zones. We believe that around maybe this time is something that has generally worked for cohorts, that for people that are joining from different places. So it will be earlier in the morning for Americas and perhaps earlier in the afternoon for Africa and Europe, and then possibly later in the evening for Asia. I know that working around time zones is always a challenge, but yeah, the time for calls, for synchronous calls, will be around that, like the exact time we haven't decided yet. But yeah, that's our idea for this in our plan. I want to give some time for Q&A of recording. Maybe if there are some other questions that people are curious about that they prefer not to be recorded, then that could be okay. We have 15 minutes left, and just to close the recording before we, so for people who will be watching the recording, again, Riva, can we do the kind of quick closing of the presentation before we leave some space for?
Yes,
of
so this is
recording
the final
presentation.
slide. If you want to be up to date of OLS news, well, the website is weareols.org, and in terms of social media, we are mostly active on LinkedIn. So if you follow the OLS page there, you will be also hearing the latest news. We obviously think the OLS community is very big. You can check the people's page on the website if you want to see who has been involved and in which roles. And we obviously always thank our current and previous funders who are allowing us to offer this cohort, as Irene mentioned, free of cost for participants. So yeah, thank you if you're watching this. If you're not here today and are watching the recording, thank you for watching the recording. And if you have any question, you can also reach out to the OLS team through social media or through email in case you have specific questions about the cohort. And yes, we're stopping the recording now. So people who want to ask questions that are not going to be recorded, feel free to do it.